Today on Hearts of Heroes, a woman trapped in a flash flood while her rescuers are left in danger.
I'd never seen anything like that. The velocity of the water, the debris that was in it.
It came down to, all right, we're gonna have to put someone in the water.
He got swept away with the current pretty quickly. Didn't get to the car.
Holy cow, this is craziness.
Plus, an officer diving into a rushing river to save a girl who's trapped in a sinking truck.
She's crying, she's panicking.
Said she can't swim.
This person's gonna die out there if I don't do something right now.
It takes a true hero to battle Mother Nature's unrelenting force.
For first responders, swiftwater rescues are a highly specialized skill. They require substantial training and are only used in the most extreme circumstances.
Having to employ this technique is very rare. But that's what happened in 2021 when the remnants of Hurricane Ida drenched historic Pennsylvania.
Berwyn, Pennsylvania is a small township sitting just outside of Philadelphia. It's home to the beautiful and historic Valley Forge National Park.
Pretty standard suburban community here, mostly middle class. Very good school districts, a lot of good people here.
While life in Berwyn is generally slow-paced, in recent years, this sleepy township's been rocked by some significant flooding.
We've had Irene, we had Sandy, and those both made huge impacts between flooding, fallen trees, and things like that. So they both kind of made us understand that we need a little bit more water rescue.
Around 2015, we started developing our need for water rescue. We started getting a lot of our members trained to effectively do these rescues, and that's where we developed these skills at our basis.
First responders are being increasingly called into action for reasons beyond just the surge in storms.
As the population grows, so does new construction, which means these once rural areas are now suburbia.
Because things like grassy areas, fields, farmlands have been replaced with townhomes, with apartment buildings and things like that, the water runoff has nowhere to go. It goes right into the storm drains, which then goes into our creeks and our rivers.
In 2021, the remnants of Hurricane Ida inundated Berwyn and resulted in a monster flood.
When Ida hit, we're getting several inches in an hour in our areas. It's not a good thing. We have a valley that goes right through our territory. All the water just flows downstream.
We knew the rainfall was going to be tremendous. We were ready. We had crews up here already. We had water rescue technicians. We were ready to go.
As soon as the water came, we were running calls. We got water rescues from the beginning there.
We started getting water rescue calls in a couple areas that we have never had.
We got dispatched to a water rescue call down in Valley Forge Park. We typically do not go to the park for water rescues, and when we got there, there was more water than we expected.
Valley Forge is surrounded by two peaks, creating a deep gorge in the landscape.
Mount Joy on this side, and then Mount Misery is over on this side.
As the storm hit, this byway became a raging river, trapping people in their vehicles.
The water was basically up to where my chest is, right around this point.
When I arrived on scene, I'd never seen anything like that. The velocity of the water, the debris that was in it, the things that were coming down.
I couldn't believe what it looked like. You couldn't get down this one road, and I've never seen it flood in this one area.
Rescuers started helping people trapped in their cars, but 300 feet down in the valley, they noticed even more people in trouble.
Sent Evan in. I said, look, go in there, get a good eyeball on what's going on. Let's just make sure there's nothing else downstream.
I had a vantage point where, at that point, I could see two vehicles. And I could clearly see in the one vehicle that there was no one in it.
So once Evan got pretty far down there, he's like, there's another car down here, there's somebody in it. This is a problem. This is a problem.
We did know we had a need to make some sort of rescue. The water was cresting the top of the vehicle at this point.
Firefighters began making their way down to get a closer view.
It was about a 300-foot drop to the peak, but it wasn't as easy as you would think walking through the woods.
As they made it to the bottom, things went from bad to worse.
The first vehicle started to move and impacted the vehicle that we knew that there was at least a victim in it.
time was very much of the essence, even more than it was. We knew the car could move at any point further down the river.
I'm looking, I'm like, okay, so we're going to figure something out here.
Coming up, the power of water becomes quite the adversary.
The current was so hard that I was unable to pull myself up.
But first, the dangers of water extend beyond just floods, especially for kids. Here are some tips to keep your little ones safe.
Water accidents are one of the leading causes of injury for adolescents. Whether at the pool, lake, or beach, always keep an eye on your children.
Although flotation devices are often reliable, nothing is a substitute for supervision. Also, consider enrolling your child in swim lessons at an early age. This can reduce an adolescent's risk of an accident by nearly 90%.
When it comes to keeping your little ones safe in the water, awareness is key and education essential.
When the remnants of Hurricane Ida drenched the Northeast in 2021, it caused torrential flooding in the historic Valley Forge area of Berwyn, Pennsylvania.
It was a flash flood. These people were just driving down the road and the water came out of nowhere.
Many people had been trapped in their cars, but they had either been rescued or gotten out themselves. There was, however, one driver left, and she was trapped in her SUV.
You're talking about a mass amount of water just flowing and inundating this area.
Because of the flooding, the other side of the river wasn't accessible. First responders knew that they had to get the driver in their car out as soon as possible.
Really early on, we assessed that a boat was just not going to work.
There's logs, there's sticks, there's debris. We had a couple dumpsters that had floated downstream. We had power lines that fell down at one point.
Performing an air rescue wasn't an option either.
There's talk about a helicopter, and the helicopters weren't even flying at that time because how bad the conditions were.
You have trees, you have a set of power lines. It would have been something out of a movie to get a helicopter there.
They had to come up with another plan.
Let's monitor the water conditions. Maybe the water will go down slightly. We can just do a quick kind of let's walk in and walk out with the driver. Well, that wasn't really happening. The rain actually was getting more intense.
At that point, the water level was so high on that car, it posed a danger for the civilian in the car.
It came down to, all right, we're gonna have to put someone in the water, which is the most dangerous thing that occurs in water rescue. What makes it dangerous is everything in the water. You can't see what's underneath. It's not like, oh, we're at the pool, or we're at the ocean.
The water has chemicals in it, gasoline, things from vehicles, not to mention sewage and things like that that have come up from storm drains, and it's just a completely toxic soup.
Despite the danger to their own lives, these rescuers weren't about to give up.
We knew somebody was in there, and regardless, we had to get to them. We were in rescue mode. We were in the mode to win.
We made the decision to throw somebody in the water to attempt to get to the victim in the car. The first person who went was an individual from the famed fire company in Westchester.
He got swept away with the current pretty quickly, didn't get to the car.
And I was kind of shocked at the velocity, how quickly he was swept away. He went upstream, he jumped out into the water to access the vehicle, try and kind of float over to the car, and he was immediately swept downstream.
The teams got him pulled back to shore, made sure he was good, got him back. We reassessed.
We looked at everybody's training levels, determined that the next person in the water would be myself.
Josh made it to the vehicle, but got swept to the driver's side and hung on for dear life. And then, unfortunately, he got swept away. A little jarring to see that moment.
I was able to swim to shore and be pulled by one of my guys down there.
So like, holy cow, this is craziness. So everyone kind of like, let's regroup again.
It just got to the point where it's like, well, let's just try one more go rescue. You're losing daylight. It's kind of like, you're up, let's go. I can't claim to be the best swimmer, but I certainly felt like I was put in that situation. Let's do this. The adrenaline was flowing.
Coming up, rescuers only have one shot left.
Just felt like this is your moment. You've done the training, you know what you're doing, you have everybody behind you.
With a motorist stranded in raging floodwaters, first responders had unsuccessfully attempted 2 swift water rescues. Now time was running out.
And with the sun setting and the water rising, their last hope was to put one final hero into that raging river and try to save the trapped driver.
The car was still continuing to move. We were worried, well, you know, piece like a log or something was going to fly through and break the window open and start getting water in the car.
Just felt like, this is your moment. You've done the training, you know what you're doing, you have everybody behind you. This is kind of the scenario you're built for, and, you know, let's go.
He's upstream. He jumped out pretty far, and he got onto the car.
At that point, the windshield wipers were still going. That's what I was really aiming for. And when I got to the vehicle, went over the hood, and fortunately I was able to grab it, and the current took me to the passenger side. Used a small tool to break out one of the small windows in the driver's side back window, and at that point we were able to acknowledge that there was just one victim. He was conscious, but obviously he was shaken up.
He was able to give her a life jacket and a helmet and pull her out of the vehicle through that rear window and up onto the roof. They were safe for now. It was just trying to figure out then, how do we get them back across?
It was a waiting game. And another obstacle was a lot of the lights on our rescuers on the shore were going out.
With the water still rushing, getting the woman across the river was simply too dangerous. All they could do was wait for the water to recede.
As the water started to recede temporarily, we kind of all realized that we needed to move. We needed to get her across. So another one of our rescuers, Ted Braun, went across on this rope system we had made.
We were basically going to have the victim in between us to safely get her across to the shore.
He was able to assist Evan with the patient, kind of creating a safety sandwich and bringing her back across to us. It was kind of the quickest and safest way we could make that work at that point.
The victim's exhausted at this point. Our guys are spent.
We knew we had hiked in this long trek, and we just kind of knew it wasn't feasible for her to make that trek out.
With the way the conditions were with the mountain, with the rocks and the mud and the water just running down, we weren't able to bring personnel back out the way they came in.
In order to make the 300-foot trek up the side of a mountain, they would now have to perform a second technical rescue, a rope rescue.
So the goal was, all right, we're gonna have to build a rope system up Mount Joy, up to the road.
We created this line system, a lot of rigging was involved, and she was placed in a backboard and hoisted up with our rescuers.
We had multiple rescuers on each side of her, carrying her up the hill. That would change out, they'd rotate so nobody got overly tired, but she was assisted out of the woods.
Really took a couple hours to get her up.
When she got to the top, there was a huge sigh of relief. It really did feel great to sit down and say, okay, we really did this.
The entire rescue took several hours, but because of the team's preparation and technical training, the woman got out without any injuries.
It was all executed really well for what we were dealing with, this kind of new rescue we had never experienced before, this kind of two-part, very technical rescue.
Two technical disciplines getting worked through during the same event. It's very rare that you see that. Some people never see that in a career. It's definitely the first time for pretty much everybody on scene.
You can't feel nothing more than a sense of pride of a job done and saving a life. You can't beat that in this line of work.
Coming up, a 12-year-old girl is trapped in a fast-moving river.
Said she can't swim.
This person's going to die out there if I don't do something right now.
Life can change on a dime, and we never know when we will need the help of a dedicated first responder.
Their response to the call of duty is swift and unwavering, a testament to their unyielding dedication to help those in need at a moment's notice.
Along the banks of the Schuylkill River, about 6 miles northwest of Philadelphia, you'll find Norristown, Pennsylvania.
Norristown to me is a community that's a melting pot of individuals from all backgrounds and cultures.
It's only a 3.4 square mile town, but it's also very intermixed with different cultures, different races, different socioeconomic levels.
The banks of the Schuylkill are extra popular in the summer. On Labor Day of 2023, Officer Matthew Walsh was on patrol at Riverfront Park.
I noticed a pickup truck in an area where cars typically aren't parked. It was facing the river at top of one of the older boat ramps. As I was making my way over, I could see a little girl in the driver's seat and a man standing next to the truck.
Inside the truck was a 12-year-old girl. Her dad was getting rid of some garbage, and he asked his daughter to pull the truck forward, something an unlicensed driver should never do.
She hit that gas pedal and launched the pickup truck into the river. I really couldn't believe what I was seeing at the time. This car had just accelerated and splashed into the river with this gentleman chasing after it.
Officer Walsh knew that it would be dangerous for him to attempt a rescue without backup, so he called for help. Meanwhile, the panicked dad started swimming out to his daughter because she didn't know how to swim. Officer Walsh made a beeline to a nearby kayak.
This is the boat that was down here the day back on Labor Day. It was flipped around the other way and full of water at the time, so we couldn't move it. And it's cable chained to a tree down here. I didn't have any bolt cutters. I didn't have any scissors or any kind of locks or keys to get it free.
Using wire cutters, Walsh tried to cut the cables, but it was useless. Just then, Officer Edward Butterworth responded to the call.
I come right up, I see a truck out in the center. I see a young female in the back of the truck.
But the truck was sinking, and both daughter and father were in a panic.
This person's gonna die out there. So is her dad, if I don't do something right now.
Officer Butterworth shreds all his gear, his gun belt, his vest, his camera, everything off. Runs out to that river to go reach her.
At that time, I was out of all options. I said, I gotta go in. I gotta go in, ride, and go get him.
County, we got one officer in the water. It's all right, hang on there, honey.
And I kept running in so I couldn't walk no more. And at that time, I started swimming out to her. I couldn't see her dad. Her dad was under the water. She was on top of him. I guess it was just pushing him down so she can survive, so she can swim. When I got out there, she's screaming. I'm telling her, breathe, breathe, kick, kick.
You could see her panicking in the river, trying to keep her head above water.
The girl's father was still underwater when suddenly
He pops up. I grab a hold of him and I keep her at the end between me and her dad so I can start pulling him back as she is flaring around.
Just then, the panicked girl lunged for the patrolman.
She grabs me and starts to push me under the water. I have no safety equipment. She could drown me. Drowning victims, all they care about is breathing and surviving.
Officer Butterworth managed to break free.
I was concerned about her coming over me and pushing me under the water. So now the three of us are out there and no one can help anyone. So I kept her dad between me and her. I grabbed a hold of him, grabbed his shirt while she was holding him, and I started doggy paddling back to the shore, dragging both of them towards me. And I said, breathe and kick.
Getting them to shore took every ounce of energy that he had, but eventually Butterworth pulled them to dry land.
Thank you, guys.
Everyone's asking me if I'm okay. I'm catching my breath as best I can. I'm on my knees, on the rocks, in there.
Both father and daughter made it out safely.
We have everybody out of the water.
Seeing her walking on that land, hearing her say thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And her father only speaks Spanish. Gave him a great big hug, and you could just tell it was a thank you, even though we weren't communicating with language.
Officer Butterworth was hailed as a hero. Still, it took time for him to process the emotions of that day.
I intentionally drove down here just to look out at the actual incident where it took place and just took it all in and thought about everything. Thought about two lives that were out there, thought about mine, thought about what could have happened, what didn't happen.
You have to understand something, that sometimes they think our job is easy and that we don't have feelings, but we do have feelings.
Knowing it was a 12-year-old girl out there, it's a child. Place your heart, regardless if you're a parent or not, it's a child.
The fact that somebody did not even think of their own personal safety and dove into a moving river to rescue two people out of this sinking truck without thinking of what possibly could happen to him is nothing short of heroic.
I just think I did my job. That's all I did. But that day, I truly feel like I did help someone.
Swift water emergencies can quickly spiral out of control, leaving unsuspecting people in the wake of these dangerous rapids.
Luckily, when it comes to these high-risk water rescues, first responders are trained and dedicated to show up when they're needed most. So, if you see one of these heroes, be sure to thank them. And thank you for watching.
We'll see you next time on Hearts of Heroes.